Coming to you live this week from the Beltline in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm your host, Kelley, and if you think you're a normal person, welcome to the Normal Person Podcast.
Some people act like normal's a four-letter word, but most of us want to be normal. To sit and talk for a bit about it, whatever it is. Are you okay today to press play? Is there any other way to be normal?
This week, we're taking a big leap out of our usual podcast format and diving headfirst into the contentious and often crazy world of United States presidential politics. Now, before you jump to any conclusions as to what that might mean, let me first assure you that, just like any other episode of this show, our goal in sharing this week's episode is to hopefully help you better understand the simple things that connect us all rather than the things that divide us. And to achieve this seemingly simple goal while editing a politically themed episode of the show was a challenge, to say the least. But after a lot of research and small focus group testing here at Normal Person Podcast Studios, we found that focusing our conversations on what people think makes a good president rather than who they think makes a good president opened the door to things that we didn't quite expect.
I believe it's always important to be humble and to have that humble beginning, to start from the ground up and to really be able to have that perspective of what it takes to be a leader.
I think the best president would be one fresh out of prison, to be honest with you.
I think physical attributes have a lot to do with it.
I feel like you have to have the ability to be a constant learner. It doesn't matter like what kind of area of schooling you go in, so long as you know what you're talking about and you're kind of competent in what you do and how you learn about it.
I would definitely like to see a president that will be able to see both sides.
I think what a good president would be is, I think they're not a bigot.
Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to encourage you, the listener, to stop what you're doing, take a big, deep breath, and think about not who you might be voting for in this 2024 election, but what qualities you think a U.S. president should uphold. What specific personality traits do you find preferable in a leader? And since this is a show that finds beauty in the mundane, how important is it to you that the president can relate to the average, everyday, normal person? To kick off this very unique election-themed episode, I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, Nora, a 20-year-old Atlanta native, and at least 3 or 4 times that I can remember since we first started recording this show, has run into our mobile podcast setup around the city right as we finished packing up. However, this time around, Nora managed to catch us right at the end of our recording, and I'm very happy that she did. Not only does she already have an impressive resume and down-to-earth personality before she's even legally allowed to drink, it just so happens that the 2024 election will be her very first time she's ever cast a vote in any election.
Let's start. What's your name?
Nora.
Nora?
Mm-hmm.
What brings you to the Beltline?
That's a great question. So I work on down at Heyday. I'm an esthetician there, and I walk the Beltline like twice a week to get there just for funsies. And so I was just walking back from work and I saw you guys and I was like, I gotta be on the show.
Let's go. Let's go. So you're an esthetician.
Yep.
How long you've been doing that?
It's been since last year, since last June, but I just got licensed in February. I've been there since February. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you like it?
I love it.
Do you have to do, estheticians more focus on like general skin health, right? Mm-hmm. But do you get to do any of the satisfying like pimple pop stuff?
Oh my goodness, all the time.
Okay.
I love doing that. I love doing that.
There's 2 types of videos that will get me to stop what I'm doing. One of them is man on the street interviews, which is why I have this podcast. And the other is pimple popping videos. I'm like so drawn into those, especially when it's like those nasty big ones.
Yeah, and they're like oozing out.
Yeah, it's like that pimple has existed longer than I've been alive.
Literally,
you know what I mean?
Or like the earwax when they're pulling it out. Yeah.
Do you get to go in with a camera?
Yes, I can, but I haven't got my camera yet, so that's the only reason why. But I like to set up on the mag lamp, and like the good juicy blackheads, I'm like just squeezing them out. And they're so great.
That's awesome. But to kick things off, I'm going to ask just an open-ended question.
Okay.
Take it. There is no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
In your opinion, what do you think makes a good president?
Humility and integrity. I believe it's always important to be humble and to have that humble beginning, to start from the ground up and to really be able to have that perspective of what it takes to be a leader.
Sure.
And as far as just integrity, just maintaining a quality image for yourself.
Okay.
It's not necessarily about like everybody is wrong, everybody is right, everybody has those times, but it's about owning up to it and having that accountability. And that's something that I know that everybody is kind of playing a part in a show in life, but it's something that you don't really see too much in politics, because you know they're all trying to just get to the finish line.
Right. It's a game, literally. Okay, well, great answers. I'm going to kind of give you some follow-ups. One of the first things you said was being humble and having humility. I think that kind of falls under like having an ethical, moral compass, right?
Yeah.
Or the feeling that the candidate is ethical. So one thing I wanted to ask is like, what ethical standards do you believe are just absolutely essential for someone in the office of president?
I believe I want to see perspective.
Okay.
I want to be able to see that you can see both sides and that you can't not necessarily argue, but you definitely may have a stronger side, but you're able to see both sides to be able to come to a decision that helps and benefits both parties.
I love that. That's a good transition into this next thing, which one of the qualities was like collaboration, right? Being able to work with others. So how important is it for you that the president can work with people that disagree or maybe didn't vote for them?
Extremely.
Okay.
There's power in kindness. You get more flies with honey or sugar, whatever the quote is.
Yeah.
But it definitely applies in every aspect of life. It's necessary, and they gotta be like Mufasa. Like gotta be respected by everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Mufasa? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is Mufasa. So a lot of people have said this, and you kind of mentioned it at the beginning, but kind of talked about like having that average person's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Or like maybe they were just a normal person in some ways. How important is it for you that like someone seeking this office, which I would argue is probably the most powerful position in the world,
Right.
comes from a background of just normal life?
I believe it's important because it shows that anybody can do it. If they really are driven, if they're motivated, if they can have that tunnel vision on their goals, they can achieve whatever they want.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of candidates that were in office were set up for that.
Yeah.
They were bottle fed the presidency.
Yeah.
And so to see another person literally work from the ground up to get to this point, or at least from what is portrayed, don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but
right. No one will.
Yeah. But just to like have that portrayal of, you know, you started in school, you worked your way up, you were in the States, all that stuff, like just seeing that really does give inspiration to people like me to be able to just keep shooting for what we want.
Okay, so do you see, and I'm glad you kind of said it that way because I don't think anyone else has, but you said like you feel inspired kind of, right?
In this election, yes.
Okay.
Now in prior, no, I think the last time I felt inspired was like the 2012 election.
Okay.
But I was like in third grade, and I'm just like, did he win? Like,
yeah.
So I didn't really know too much about it, but I just knew he came from a humble beginning too.
Yeah.
So just seeing this, like, coming back to a time where I actually play a part is super cool.
Yeah, I like that. And you're excited to vote?
I'm nervous.
Okay.
Yes. But yes, I'm excited.
Okay. Just so people have some perspective, I'm going to ask you one more
Now,
question.
I don't want to give too many surprises away too early in the episode, but one thing you're going to be very surprised to hear is not the particular opinions and perspectives of all the guests today, but rather just how much they have in common. We talked to so many different people. In fact, we set a personal record for the most amount of interviews collected in a single recording during this episode. And there were so many different perspectives and different demographics of people that participated in these discussions. Take our next guest, Carlos, for instance. He's a 42-year-old, soon-to-be college graduate from Ohio. Now, with a 22-year age gap between him and our last guest, Nora, you would probably expect them to be in complete opposition in what they think makes a good U.S. president. But listen very closely to what Carlos has to say.
Just in your opinion, what do you think makes a good United States president?
Being that we are the youngest nation in history, just someone that understands that we need to grow. And not so much grow economically, grow financially, grow whatever, but just grow as a country, because a lot of these other countries out there are already established countries. And, they already have the establishment of being around before us.
Right.
I feel that we're still wet behind the ears when it comes to this. And to just really say it, right now in this day and age where we're going a little bit too far left, too far right. I guess how I'm trying to say this is I would believe like a good president, an ideal president right now, would be someone that is open-minded.
Okay.
Maybe they may be left, maybe they may be right, but they do hear and they are empathetic to the opposing position. Okay. And they go in to try to figure out exactly how to make both sides happy.
How important do you think it is for a candidate to be able to effectively work with the opposition?
To be honest, truthfully, my personal opinion is I think we should switch the whole game up, and if you are a Republican, you should have a Democratic vice president. That's how
Well,
much.
They used to do that,
Yeah.
and then you know what happened? There was an assassination. And from the opposite party. I wish I could make it up. This is America, But I know what you mean.
Yeah. So that's how much I believe in it. I believe if we were like that, I believe that we should go back to that, and I believe that people should be held accountable for that.
So in terms of remind me, 42. Okay, 42. Yeah. In your lifetime, do you feel like this is something that you've seen get worse, or stay the same, get better?
Oh, just progressively worse.
Okay.
I don't want to sit there and say, equalicism and, feminism, masculinism, all that played a part of it. But when you get into the whole thing, accountability, especially with, I believe, cancel culture, it puts a target on a lot of people. Sure. And so many people want to please the opposers or even their supporters so much that they would, I guess, jeopardize their own morals and ethics to sit there and make sure that that's right. So,
well, you actually walked perfectly into my next question, which was something that you also alluded to. What ethical standards do you think are essential?
So, being a first-year psychology major, taking ethics as one of my first classes, trying to remember all the terminologies.
Don't worry. They change them every year.
It's going to change. Yeah, it's going to change 2 years from now.
Yes.
But I would definitely like to see a president that will be able to see both sides.
Okay.
Understand that I have my own. Okay, let's just say, quote unquote, I am the new president, and I'm not saying me as in Carlos. I'm the president. No, but me as a human being, I could be you. So when I say I mean anyone.
Sure.
So I am the president, and I get a country who is ready to go to war with another country,
right.
And it is me that's like the deciding factor of, okay, I'm going to support or not support what's going on.
Right.
I want to be able to look at both sides of the situation and say, okay, I see where you're at, and I see where you're at. Where can we meet in the middle, and how can this not be an issue? Without, for one, being so passive that, I'm a pushover,
right.
And two, not so aggressive that I'm demanding.
Right. So it's a balancing act.
Yes.
Almost. Yeah. And you think a lot of that, not to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like it's in the way that someone presents themselves, maybe like with in the confidence of their actions, or do you think it's actual ethical values that they?
Oh no, it's definitely an ethical and moral value.
Okay.
You know, a president needs to make sure that his core values and his personal opinions do not cross over, or hers, or theirs.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm kind of glad I'm having these conversations with strangers. You don't think about these things. People get caught up in the, I guess, the red versus blue aspect of it, right?
It's been like that. And just to say, I mean, it's really hard to sit there and claim to be one of the greatest nations in the world when we are so at ends with each other.
Yeah.
You know, and that is a red-blue problem.
Yeah.
You know.
And just to ask you, because I have mainly been interviewing high schoolers today for some reason, and they're not. I do not want to invest. I'm going to cut that out because
No. I get it. No. I understand.
Their
but
opinion is so valuable because they really are obviously the future, and like I do feel like people, but in 18 to 25 are going to have more of a.
But that's some of these young adults, young teens. You know, they're not educated enough, and they are more emotionally driven from popular social media, whoever their idols are, whether it be a singer, actor, or social media star.
Sure.
They are influenced by them blindly without any type of educational background in the situation.
Yep.
So I get it, and you can edit that out. I just want to let you know.
I keep it in. I just feel like all the Gen Z people I interviewed are going to get pissed at me, but it's okay. I'm a millennial, so they already are, I guess. All right, so final question of the day. You don't have to answer this.
Okay. Before you get mad, first of all, if you're one of our Gen Z audience members, I just want you to know that I love you very much. I appreciate you listening to the show, and I highly value your opinion. But secondly, I was genuinely very surprised to see just how many high school age Gen Zers approached our mobile podcast booth throughout this particular recording, especially to state the obvious that none of them could legally vote. Now, that being said, I did find it interesting to find out just how much they felt that their lives were personally affected by current events. Even more interesting, many of the older guests you'll hear today, like our new friend Carlos, not saying you're old by the way, Carlos, just, in contrast, they share the same sense of cynicism about candidates' ability to separate rhetoric from actual achievable goals.
What are y'all's names?
I'm Patrick.
I'm Hazel.
Patrick and Hazel. What brings y'all to the Beltline today?
We're just chilling. We're just hanging out.
We're hanging out. We both had long weeks.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about it. What do y'all do?
Marching band.
Okay. So I'm assuming that y'all are in high school.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I promise it doesn't matter, but can y'all legally vote?
No.
That's fine. I know y'all are in high school. You won't be able to vote this election. I'm still interested.
Sadly.
I'm still interested in hearing your opinion and what you think, because you'll be there in 28 and hopefully 26, and then all the little elections in between. But in your opinion, what do you think makes a good U.S. president? Who wants to go first?
Should I go first?
Yeah, you go first. I went first the entire
I feel
time.
like there's no perfect answer to a good president.
Sure.
Every president is going to have a downside and a good side. The president can control so much, like state laws generally, like they can't really do much about state laws because that's something really hard to fix.
Sure.
Like abortions, for example.
Yeah.
Some states can change their laws to make it illegal. So I think that's a really big thing. I think what a good president would be is, I think they're not a bigot.
Okay.
I think this is a personal bias, but also matches my needs as a citizen.
And everyone has one vote at the end of the day. We all have equal power in theory.
Right.
So your concerns are just as valid. So don't diminish yourself.
Oh, and gun laws.
Okay.
Especially gun laws for me because what happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That hit reality because my school specifically, we enforced a new rule, which we do not have our phones during the school day. They are locked in these pouches. I think when I realized what happened was, it was after school, but during the school day, my teacher said there was a shooting, and I just thought it was one of those shootings in Midtown, so I didn't think much of it until I was at practice, and my director said, let's take a moment of silence for Appalachia High School because they just had a shooting, and I just my mouth just dropped. I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
And this was 30 minutes away from my school. So reality really kicked in for me there because I'm like, that could have been my school.
Yeah.
It could have been.
It can be anyone.
It could have been a school 5 minutes, 10 minutes away. It could have been any school in Georgia generally.
Yeah.
And that really just.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. I mean, I think I detached myself when I was in high school from the reality of that happening, but it seems like it's more frequent. I mean, I graduated in 2013.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a pause because I have some follow-ups.
All right.
But I want to get you to kind of answer generally, what do you think, in your opinion, makes a good U.S. president?
See, the one thing that I know for sure that a president needs, they need like good good management skills, right? They need to like plan things out, right? But they also need like some sort of leadership, right? But like if we're talking about like the 2024 candidates right now, personally, I wouldn't say any of the options are good or bad either, right? Because when Kamala Harris was vice president and everything, right? They were doing some good things, right? Just they weren't really, I wouldn't say that they were really directed towards like everybody, right? Sure. Like some of the stuff she's claiming like at the moment, it's just like it's stuff that's like repetitive over and over and over, right? Yeah. Like presidents are always like, oh, I'm gonna fix this, I'm always gonna fix that, right? It's sort of like like those class presidents and everything where they're always like claiming, oh, I'm gonna do this for the school and everything, and they like never act on it either. Like
so who's your class president really quick?
At my school?
Yeah, can we add them right now?
I low-key don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know.
I remember in 5th grade, our class presidents.
Yeah, bro.
They did the same stuff to us.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's just like they do act on what they're gonna say, but like the main point for like why we vote for them isn't like it doesn't happen, right?
Sure.
And like but like for Trump, for example, right? I wouldn't say he's a good pick either, because like the stuff with like Young Thug or like YSL, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So like obviously that's not good either, right? And it's just like it's like hard to pick like who I would vote for. I mean, I can't vote, but like who I would vote for, because like they're not good options either, right? Like there's no like outstanding like performer, I would say.
Okay. Well, okay, let me reframe this a different way, because I hear you. Not thinking about the candidates this very second, but in terms of just qualities, that's what I want to focus on. If we didn't have two options, if we had unlimited options, right? What qualities would you look for in a candidate that are important to you?
Someone who's similar to the average American, right? But the average American is like has many definitions, right? The average American is all based on perspective, right? But the average American for me is just somebody who's trying to like just live their own, like live the life they want to live in America, right? Sure. Whether that be they want to be super wealthy, or whether they want to just like they just want to get by, for example. They just want to like live a happy life, for example. Like
so they have some empathy with. They've maybe even lived an average American life.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, like I said before, they need to have like good planning and like good like management and stuff like that, because that's like some stuff I need to work on too, like self-management and everything.
You had mentioned that there's a lot of like pumped up false promises, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying you would rather see someone be like, here's what I can realistically do?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just like I understand you try to make these things happen, right? But the problem is we can't, like the way that like I'm pretty like it goes like the Bill of Rights and everything, like the Bill of Rights process, how it goes like to like one House of Representatives to like another, then goes to the president, then it goes to like it's hard. The whole process. It's hard to get things approved in the first place, and when it's things that.
Hazel and Patrick, if you're listening, I want to hear back from you in 2026 or 2028 when we try this particular election special again. I really mean it. Now, since we just heard from two high schoolers that aren't technically old enough to participate in voting this election cycle, I think it's only appropriate that we also share the perspective of someone else who also isn't technically eligible to vote, but not in the way that you would expect. You'll see what I mean.
Well, actually, one thing I do want to say before we get into it is maybe just a little spiel. Like, tell me a little bit of our audience, a little bit about what you do, how old you are. I feel like that stuff kind of matters.
For sure. So I'm first generation Mexican. I've been moved around a lot. Right now, I am here in Atlanta. I've been here for 3 years. I am a lab technician, so that's kind of vague, but I basically work for a chemical recycling company.
Not the one that exploded.
Not the one that exploded,
Okay.
but I heard about that, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Because I got the EPA notification.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I leave my windows open?
No, it's not like I was actually kind of concerned that
yeah,
day.
yeah.
Well, okay, I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit. You've got a great, welcoming personality, and you're the first guest on today's podcast.
Cool.
Let's just start with that open question. In your opinion, what do you think makes a good president?
You know what? I feel like a good president does their very best to read the room and figure out the people's wants and needs.
Okay.
I'm the first. Well, I'm not completely transparent. I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
I can't vote, but I'm doing that. I'm doing the whole process this year.
Good.
So
You will one day.
right, I will one day. I follow a little bit of politics, just because that citizenship has gotten closer.
Yeah.
And I will be able to vote.
Yeah.
So I've been educating myself. Yeah, so basically I think for instance, full transparency, I do not support the genocide that's going on currently.
Yeah.
So obviously a good president would hear the people's wants and be like, hey, a lot of people oppose this genocide.
Okay.
Let's not keep funding that.
Yeah, they're basically responsive to popular opinion.
Yeah. Also the immigration on the border stance. You listen to past Democratic presidents, and they've done a lot of policies of DACA, at least trying to make an effort. And I feel now it's just less, more of a, there's a crisis on the border, and it's just capitulating more to the right.
Yeah. To follow up, in terms of just ethical standards, what do you think are some ethical standards that are just absolutely essential for a U.S. president?
Human compassion, human empathy are just, I think, the best morals for a person. Obviously, I think physical attributes have a lot to do with it too.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, again, I come from Mexico, so I think, and we had Peña Nieto, who's I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I
he's
do.
Super Latin, telenovela looking dude, suave, and then we got Nora gentleman, and now we have our first female president. So that I feel those physical attributes, someone who's big and strong, and unfortunately, I'm more of a policy. I try and look at policies
Sure.
as opposed to physical attributes. But I feel those. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was a thing I read, and it might have been didn't do a lot of research on it, but U.S. presidents are all 6 feet. That's kind of crazy, and I don't know. I found kind of a fun, interesting fact.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean, you've heard the saying in food before, people eat with their eyes.
Yeah.
It's kind of in politics, I feel, unfortunately, also the case.
Yeah.
No, it is kind of annoying.
Our new friend and hopefully soon-to-be fellow U.S. citizen, Sergio, might really be onto something in this political theory he proposed. Is there really a correlation with how attractive a presidential candidate is and how many votes they get? Speaking of just downright objectively attractive U.S. presidents, our next guest, a 47-year-old unhomed man who you might remember from way back in episode 4, definitely agrees with Sergio's new political theory. However, even though they might agree on qualities of a U.S. president, they aren't always talking about the exact same things.
So I'm just going to say, because I've gotten to know you through a bunch of interviews, but since this is a political kind of conversation, maybe we'll start off, one, what's your name?
I'm John.
John.
AKA the Beltline Poet or Prophet.
Okay. John, the Beltline Poet or Prophet. You've been on the show before a few times.
I have.
Just to give people some perspective, tell me a little bit about yourself in terms of demographics and, if you were thinking as a politician, how would they classify you?
Anti-political.
Okay. Okay. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that I don't serve the politicians that we put in office.
Yeah.
The politicians that we put in office are puppets for corporations and high-ranking officials and businesses that need them to do what they need them to do in order for this country to supposedly revolve.
In your opinion, what do you think makes a good president?
A good president should be for the people, not for the government.
Okay. What do you mean?
What I mean is that a good president, when going to war or deciding to pick battles, should take the vote of the American people. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Instead, the government decides who and what battles we're going to pick and choose.
Gotcha.
You know, it used to be a point where the American people had a right, like with the Vietnam War. We voted on going to war.
Yeah.
You know, the American people did. You know, this particular situation, let's just point out the fact of Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
We're going to war not because of protection of our people, but because of the fact that there's things over there that this country wants. Oil. Even today, with the technology converting over to battery powered, we're still fighting wars over things that aren't necessarily important to us anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't understand why our government, our president, is allowing people to dictate to this country without asking us first whether we should fight this battle. And when you ask me the question, what kind of president do I think we need? I think the best president would be one fresh out of prison.
Oh.
To be honest with you.
Why is that?
Well, somebody that has been rehabilitated to the actual events that go on in life, has been through struggle, has been through understanding of what it is to struggle. You know, this country doesn't really have the struggle we had a long time ago. And that's because we take everything we need from other countries. We don't ask for it, we take it. You know, I got told the other day that I couldn't have an opinion about what the president was doing. I'm like, why can't I? It's a free country. No, it's a capitalist country now. Oh, so it's no longer free. We're slaves to the capitalistic views of society.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, just for context, how old are you?
I'm 47.
So, as a 47-year-old, and you had mentioned the Vietnam War, and you said that Americans had more of a role in the decision making.
Yes, we did.
Where do you see a shift historically and presidents shifting away from public opinion into, I guess, what you would argue as fulfilling the needs of the state?
Well, first of all, God bless you, Bill Clinton. The only real president I ever felt really did anything to prove that he was human. Made a mistake in office, and we still looked up to him.
Yeah.
You know, where did we go wrong? By not doing that anymore. We realized, yeah, okay, he's human, he made a mistake, and we allowed him to stay in office. You know, and I'm okay with that, you know, and that's why I know that the Clintons had some really foul crap going on in their campaign and their presidency, but at the same time, that one event for me is what set Bill Clinton apart from the rest of the presidents.
Sure.
He was human. He made a mistake.
Some would argue, and again, not inserting my opinion, but some would argue that every president would make some type of mistake at some point. What is it about that particular one that you feel like it humanized him?
Well, he lied about it, first of all. That's a human response. Oh, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Yes, you did. You put a cigar in her vagina and then smoked it. You know, come on. That's human.
Yeah.
That's you having fun behind your wife's back, which is a human trait. You know, so the more and more I see of these presidents this day and age, they've taken the humanity out of their presidency.
Wow.
You know, their human nature.
All right. We've heard a lot of very interesting and varied perspectives today. And it's my sincere hope that at least at this point in the episode, you're starting to feel a bit more hopeful about the future of America, whatever that might be. That being said, as always, I saved the best and most optimistic conversation for last. I'd like you to meet Chandler, a native Georgian, postgraduate degree holder, public health worker, and if I do say so myself, just an all-around class act of a guy. No matter which candidate you might be voting for in the next few weeks, I encourage you to not just consider all of the perspectives you've heard this episode, but especially what our new friend is about to say in response to today's question.
Today we're talking to people on the Beltline. We're getting a little political, but not in the sense of like, I want to know who you're voting for.
Right.
You know what I mean? But just so you know, this is the only time I've ever put rules on a question. I never do that. I would try to keep it open-ended. The only rule that I'm going to kind of give you, and you can break it, honestly, you can do whatever you want. This is your show for the next 15 minutes.
Oh, you shouldn't have told me that.
I would very much prefer, and your interview will probably make the edit, wink, wink, if you don't mention candidates by name. Yes.
I'll try not to. If I start, like, turning red and sweating from, like, the anger and frustration of not doing it,
that's fine, yeah.
I'll let you know.
Okay. No, that's totally fair. If you can't control it, like, let it out. But for the most part, if you can, just please avoid it.
I will.
So, with that being said, in your opinion, what do you think makes a good president?
Well, for starters, as a person of academic background, first and foremost, I feel like you have to have the ability to be a constant learner. It doesn't matter like what kind of area of schooling you go in, so long as you know what you're talking about and you're kind of competent in what you do and how you learn about it. You can't just say like, ooh, I have the bigger stick kind of thing. And it's never about ruling with an iron fist, because at a certain point, then you go from the basics of our government and democracy, and now you're turning it to kind of like essentially a dictatorship at that point.
Sure.
And so I feel like the sense of everlasting growth and learning, the ability to diffuse situations, because I mean that'll be exactly what you're dealing with as a president. Okay. Not only diffusing at-home situations between the different powers in the judiciary, the Senate, all that, and then even like foreign powers when you go to these summits like the UN, the Greenscape conference that was in France a while back, and then even when it comes to our new forms of energy and everything, like with the radioactive energy that we're doing, nuclear energy, and even with the solar that's coming into play, I think like you just have to have the ability, that I think that's most important, is just everlasting growth and everlasting learning, because you're a constant student of the game.
Sure. Yeah, and the world changes very, very quickly.
Oh, every day.
Yeah, literally every day. So one of the first things that you had mentioned is kind of like crisis management, right? So just to get kind of specific into this, like how important is it for a president to manage a crisis effectively?
Well, I mean, I think in recent history, I think it's extremely important. Like the way you are able to not only communicate your thoughts and communicate what is happening behind the scenes to the public that this crisis is going to not only affect, but is partaking in, is imperative. Yeah. I mean, you can literally have a society crumble and the world quite literally be inside. for not trying to cause any PTSD for the COVID years, but like literally we were inside for like God knows how long.
Yeah.
And I mean, because of misinformation, miscommunication, and just simply like not knowing what our people were doing from like whether it be presidential or even a citizen kind of standpoint, we were all just kind of left with a big question mark over our head every day.
And that kind of goes to what you were saying at the beginning of like the constant growth and learning and adaptation, or adapting to the constant change. So that's a great answer. I have two more follow-ups. Ethical standards, right? What ethical standards do you think are essential for someone in the office of president to uphold?
I mean, it's got to follow the constant growth of the societal ethical standards, right? Like we continue to grow, we continue to build. I mean, the exact paper that a lot of presidential candidates quote, which is the Constitution, is like the main body of work that should and is amendable.
Yeah.
Can I say that one more time?
Yeah.
Should and is amendable.
So what you're saying is that the document can actively change. Just
correct.
To be clear.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm learning too.
And it should be like to the day. I mean, that's why the amendments, like they're not like new, or they're not old, but they're not new either.
Sure.
So like some of them are fairly recent within like some people's lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why can't we continue to grow on that? And I feel like ethical standards should be constant. Like obviously the golden rule is a standard, but like as a president, you need to understand like your finger and your opinion is going to be the basis of a lot of people's opinion.
Yeah,
and what
that
you
makes
say.
sense.
Like, you're an influential person. You're quite literally half the country's spokesperson.
Yeah.
And the other half, they might not like you, but you are still their spokesperson.
You still represent them.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned like half the country, because it seems the reality of the situation the last like 2 to 3 election cycles, maybe further back. You know, I couldn't vote until the 2016 election.
Okay.
But I was like 17 in 2012. So I was kind of politically wanting to vote / involved, didn't have the chance to. And then I kind of have noticed since following politics in my lifetime that it does seem like there is a literal 50-50 divide, right?
Yeah, there is.
It's kind of crazy.
There is.
Even in like the Georgia elections, I don't know.
Oh, don't get me started on my home state's elections.
It's crazy how narrow those margins are, right?
It is criminally insane how narrow those margins are, yeah.
I was going to ask, how important is it for presidents to work effectively with, I don't want to use the word the opposition, because we do kind of create this red versus blue thing, but maybe people that disagree with them, maybe they didn't vote for them. How important do you think it is for a president to work across the aisle on both sides?
It is necessary, but like the saying goes, like, you keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And I say that in a kind of rudimentary way where it's like, you know, we created the opposition of red versus blue, like you stated.
Right.
But if we're doing that, okay, well, if blue is, you know, what we align with and red is our enemy, well, the best person to learn from is our enemy, because, you know, whatever law, whatever rule, whatever happens, it has to be equitable for everybody to enjoy it and it to be working for the common person.
Yeah.
So if we can't work with each other and find an equitable stance on what we want to pass and what we want to kind of present to the people and present as like a new kind of amendable kind of law, then it's like it's not going to pass. It's not going to get traction even before we even try to vote on it.
Right.
So I think it's, like I said, imperative that the president has that ability to be not only sound in listening, but sound in their communication and equitable with how they work with each other.
Yeah.
Because obviously we have that majority in House,
Sure.
whether it be falling to red or blue, but like you have to work with the minority of the House as well.
Yep.
So.
Yep. You know, we just talked about crises, but we've seen that play out, I guess, in different ways in different parties, but it's hard to effectively manage crises when
it is.
Everything is a political game.
It is. And I mean, everything being in that kind of landscape, everything is politicized. But like at the end of the day, it's people to people.
Sure.
And if you can't equitably like work with them or find some kind of common ground to where, okay, we don't have to agree 100% on it, but if we can get 80% or even 75%, at least we have the stepping stones of like creating something that can then flourish and become something good. We've seen with previous presidential years and previous presidential terms, we see that like even the policies that they want to pass, they pass during their presidential lifetime, or I should say their presidential tenure, but like it doesn't go into effect until like years afterwards. Like so we don't even see the full effect. But if we can have that equitable conversation or that equal conversation to create equitable change, then it cascades into a beautiful thing.
I agree. Well, it has been a joy talking to you. As one college-educated voter to another.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Normal Person Podcast, where we've heard what a few everyday, normal people have to say about their preferences for what a U.S. president should be. As always, I want to give a big, big thanks to all the guests who sat down with me, took time out of their day, and helped make this week's episode possible. I also want to thank you, the listener, for joining us for this once every election cycle special episode. And speaking of, if you're looking for access to simple, easy to navigate resources on this year's candidates for U.S. president and the major policy and issue stances that they hold, check out the show notes for a link to more voting and registration resources in your particular state. If you really enjoyed this week's episode, please consider subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts or following us on Spotify, and leave us a review if you feel so inclined. And also be sure to follow us on social media at Normal Person Pod for interview clips, upcoming episode teasers, and much, much more. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelley Boston. Don't forget to vote for your candidate of choice if you're able to, and we'll see you next week.